CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
There's a warning from Premier Christy tonight that the economic outlook for BC is about to get worse. The finance minister will deliver his quarterly economic report tomorrow. And the Premier is warning British Columbians tonight that those numbers will not be pretty. Clark says despite that gloomy outlook, though, she still vows to balance the budget next February, and she says she can do it without cutting health or education spending. Everything else, however, is on the table. 2 months ago, Finance Minister Mike said a big drop in natural gas revenue had pushed BC's projected budget deficit to $1.1 billion. Protesters gathered outside Royal Bank branches in Victoria today. They were there to demonstrate against the Northern Gateway Pipeline project and proposals for other pipelines that would travel on the same route. They targeted RBC because they say the bank has more than $3.5 billion invested in the companies that want to build those pipelines. The protesters stationed themselves near the RBC entrances, handing out flyers. They say the goal is to make people aware so that they can make informed choices about where their money goes.
Really, it's a truth-telling day about what's going on in our province. There's not been a lot of awareness around the Pacific Trails pipeline, which is the liquid natural gas pipeline, which will also be using super tankers out of Kitimat. So we want people to be aware of that. A lot of the focus has been on Enbridge, and we want to create awareness around all the other industries that are planning on destroying our coast and our territories.
So what was the reaction? A number of RBC customers stopped to read the leaflets and to talk to the protesters, but the folks we spoke to said the information did not change their minds about where they'll bank.
The corporations are all investing into things that we probably don't know about, probably not the greatest things, and it doesn't really affect the way I bank. My bank is, I actually do bank here, and they've been good so far, so.
I think there's probably a lot of other banks that also invest in businesses that if you dug deep enough, you might find some similar kinds of concerns. So if you started, using that logic as to where you would invest, then you could potentially run out of banking options.
As for the Royal Bank, it had no comment except to say it respects the rights of individuals to protest, and the company prides itself on being able to work with all stakeholders to have a constructive discussion on issues that are important to Canadians. Staff at a Colwood dry cleaner had a lot more to deal with than just dirty shirts this morning. A silver Mercedes plowed right through the front door of the Colwood Corners dry cleaning. Now, there were no customers in the store at the time, which was fortunate, but 2 staff members got a scare.
I heard a bang and came to have a look, and there was a car up against my car, and the engine was racing. So I approached the car and asked her I was holding my hand out, trying to get her to, calm down, and she put the car into gear and just raced across the parking lot and over the bollards and through the front of that shop there.
West Shore RCMP say the woman driving the car was in her 80s. They believe that she hit at least 4 vehicles before she finally came to a stop in the dry cleaners.
We're not sure at this point exactly why this has happened, but what we can tell you is that there was a lone female driver. She has been taken to hospital. She's an 80-year-old driver, and she's been taken to hospital for treatment and observation.
This is the 4th time that a car has gone through the front of a store at the Colwood Corners complex. The metal bollards were put up around the plaza to try to prevent any more such incidents, but RCMP say the car today ran right over one. A developing story tonight. Emergency crews have responded to a flood at the Fairmont Empress Hotel. Victoria fire crews say a sprinkler head in the hotel's sauna has sprung a leak. The drain in the sauna couldn't handle the amount of water, and that caused a bit of a flood. Crews have since turned the water off, and they are now suctioning up the water and cleaning up the mess. A pair of farmers from California has started a fight over a pod of killer whales that spends most of its time in the waters off Vancouver Island. The melon and cotton farmers in California say the whales are preventing them from accessing water that they need for their land. The farmers' complaint has sparked a review in the U.S. as to whether the southern resident orcas should be removed from the endangered species list. The farmers say they need access to the water in the Sacramento-San Joaquin River deltas for irrigation on their land, but the water's off limits for most of the year to protect salmon in the river as the main source of food for the whales.
The salmon are critical for the survival of southern residents. There's no question about that. The research that we have so far is showing that southern residents need salmon, in particular Chinooks. Cooperative conservation is the only way that these animals are going to have a secure future.
Hall says delisting the whales would be a major step backwards given what's been accomplished to protect them in recent years. The southern resident killer whales were listed as endangered by the Canadian Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in 2001, and they were listed under the Species at Risk Act in 2003. The U.S. review is expected to last 9 months. Well, the city of Nanaimo has agreed to meet with a group of people fighting to save the Cholera dams from demolition. The group presented to council last night saying that the dams do not pose as much of a risk as the city believes they do. Earlier this month, Nanaimo Council voted in favor of a staff recommendation to demolish the dams over fears they might collapse in an earthquake and flood the surrounding neighborhood. The mayor says he's willing to meet with opponents of the plan, but says he's not sure that demolition can be avoided because the other options are simply too expensive.
We're told that it could be upwards of $7 million to deconstruct or take down the 2 dams, and something between $20 and $30 million to reinforce them and build them both back to a safe standard. It's all, well and good to try to save something as a piece of beauty, and I respect that. But gosh, I just can't overlook the risk to the population, to the community, and certainly the homeowners in the Harewood area.
The mayor and city staff expect to meet with opponents in the next week or so. One of the men who was gunned down in the lobby of a Burnaby hotel yesterday has been confirmed as a high-profile Lower Mainland gangster. Suk Dak was killed yesterday along with his bodyguard, Thomas Mantell. Dak's brother, Gurmit, was also shot and killed. That happened at Metrotown in October of 2010. Last year, police in the Lower Mainland issued a warning that anyone associating with Dak was at risk. Suk Dak was facing conspiracy and trafficking charges at the time of his death. His trial was to resume today. The Crown accuses him of being the mastermind behind a large-scale drug lab. Port Coquitlam is considering bringing in Canada's first ever bullying bylaw. It would allow the city to order bullies to attend remedial programs, and if they do not attend, they could be fined. The bylaw proposal is part of the Be Someone campaign created in the wake of the suicide of Amanda Todd. She would have turned 17 today. Convicted killer Kelly Ellard has waived her right to a parole hearing, which was set for early next year. Ellard was convicted of second-degree murder in the 1997 death of Rena Virk. Virk was beaten and drowned at the Craigflower Bridge on the Gorge Waterway. It's the second time that Ellard has given up her right to apply for parole. She canceled the 2010 hearing. Ellard's next opportunity to apply for parole will not be till February of 2015. Lawyers for John Furlong have filed a civil claim against reporter Laura Robinson and the Vancouver Free Press Publishing Corporation. That claim is in response to an article that Robinson wrote that was published in the Georgia Straight. The article accused Furlong of being physically abusive to First Nation students while volunteering as a teacher at a school in Burns Lake in 1969 and 1970. Furlong denies the allegations. Toronto Mayor Rob Ford says he'll fight tooth and nail to keep his job after a judge kicked him out of office. The embattled mayor welcomed the Grey Cup champions to Toronto City Hall today. His lawyer will be in court December 5th to apply for a stay of the judge's ruling. An appeal of yesterday's decision ousting Ford for breaking conflict of interest rules will be heard likely early in the new year. A lawyer for the City of Toronto says the judge's ruling blocks Ford from running if a by-election is eventually held to replace him. Ford was found to be in conflict of interest after soliciting donations for his football foundation using City Hall letterhead, then voting in a council vote on whether he should have to repay the amount, which was just a little over $3,000. A team of experts has now exhumed the body of Yasser Arafat. They're trying to find out whether the late Palestinian leader was poisoned. His remains were removed from a mausoleum and taken to a mosque for forensic testing before they are reburied. Arafat died in 2004 after a sudden illness. Last summer, a Swiss lab detected traces of a lethal radioactive substance on his clothing. The government of Greece is welcoming the debt deal it has been granted by the Eurozone and by the International Monetary Fund. Greece will receive up to 43 billion euros in assistance over the next few years. Greece is the most heavily indebted nation in the troubled Eurozone. A dramatic scene in Sydney, Australia today. The arm of a high-rise crane collapsed onto a building. The crane's cab had caught fire. The flames ran up the cable supporting the crane. That forced the powerful arm down. The crane operator was able to escape, and no one on the ground was hurt either. Well, Adam is off tonight, but there's still time for a look at arts and lifestyle for you, beginning with some famous people news. And the reason they call Bruce Springsteen the boss still. If you were there last night, this was quite a show. Springsteen still getting it done. Crowd surfing at age 63. He brought the house down in Vancouver last night. 18,000 showed up for a 3-hour-plus high-energy performance. Fans say Springsteen still gives some of the best concerts of his career. This was his Wrecking Ball tour, and he did not disappoint. It was quite a show. Well, the city of Nanaimo is trying to find a new way to deal with alcohol and consumption of it in city arenas after sports teams protested the strict new rules. The city says it's cracking down on serving alcohol at the Nanaimo Ice Centre to prevent problems, but the hockey teams who use it say the new zero-tolerance rules could lead to bigger issues, including the loss of thousands of dollars for the local economy. They say that money is raised through selling drinks at tournaments, and that helps them cover costs. Organizers of the Tubbers tournament say that after 32 years of hosting a successful event, if the rules don't change, they'll have no choice.
It is the cost of putting on a tournament like this is fairly significant. So if we can't put on if we can't serve our own liquor, then we use that money to offset some of the costs of these tournaments. We can't afford to put on the tournament. So therefore the tournament will no longer be canceled.
A report goes to Nanaimo Council tomorrow to try to find a compromise to license alcohol sales at the Nanaimo Ice Centre. Organizers say each year the annual Tubbers tournament draws more than 44 teams, and that brings a big economic boost to the Harbour City.